The red Maserati didn't just crash into the flower delivery truck, it obliterated it. The impact sent a mushroom cloud of white powder erupting into the morning sky like Mount Vesuvius had decided to sneeze. For a moment, the entire street looked like a winter wonderland, designed by someone having a very bad day. What the actual... Hazel Murphy's voice cut through the chaos as she dropped her tray of fresh croissants, watching them bounce across the bakery floor like buttery tumbleweeds. Through the window of Murphy's Miracle Bakery, she witnessed what could only be described as the most expensive flower fight in Brooklyn history. From the smoking wreckage emerged a figure that looked like a GQ model who'd been attacked by a very aggressive pastry chef. Tall, devastatingly handsome, and now completely white from head to toe, he stumbled out wearing what used to be a $5,000 suit, and was now modern art titled Armani Meets Carbohydrates. "No, no, no!" he screamed at the universe, his voice cracking like a teenager asking someone to prom. "Today is literally the one day I cannot look like a walking wedding cake!" Hazel couldn't help it. She snorted. Actually snorted. The man looked like he'd been dipped in cocaine and was having an existential crisis about it. But then she saw his face. Beneath the flower mask, his green eyes held the kind of panic she'd only seen in her own mirror the day she'd accidentally used salt instead of sugar in her grandmother's famous chocolate chip cookies. Pure, soul-crushing terror. "Hey!" she called out, jogging toward him in her flour-dusted apron and combat boots, a combination that somehow made her look like a badass baker ready for war. "Are you hurt?" He whirled around, and for a split second, time stopped. Even covered in baking ingredients and clearly losing his mind, he was stunning. Like ridiculously, unfairly. Why does God have favorites? Stunning. "Hurt? Hurt?" He gestured wildly at the disaster zone. "Lady, I'm beyond hurt. I'm apocalyptically screwed. I'm so screwed that if screwed was a country, I'd be the president, the national anthem, and the flag." Hazel blinked, then burst out laughing. "Did you just compare yourself to the flag of Screwdistan? This isn't funny!" But his mouth twitched, betraying him. "Oh, it's hilarious. You look like you lost a fight with the Pillsbury Doughboy's angrier cousin." He stared at her for a moment, then, despite everything, cracked a smile. "That's actually pretty accurate. I'm Hazel, by the way, professional baker and apparently disaster witness. Sebastian Kane." He extended his hand, then looked at it. "Actually, maybe we skip the handshake. I'm not sure what percentage of me is still human." "Kane? Like Kane Industries? The billionaire Kane?" His face fell. "Unfortunately, yes. And right now this billionaire is about to lose everything because I can't make it to the most important meeting of my life, looking like I raided a flower factory." "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where I either prove I'm not a corporate spy, or I lose my company, my reputation, and probably my will to live." Hazel's expression shifted. The playfulness faded, replaced by something softer. "That's actually terrible. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's my fault for trusting the wrong people." His voice cracked slightly. I worked so hard to build something meaningful, you know? And now it's all falling apart because someone I trusted stabbed me in the back." And there it was, the moment Hazel's heart did a little flip. Beneath the expensive clothes and privilege, she saw something achingly familiar. Someone who'd poured their soul into something they loved, only to watch it threatened by forces beyond their control. "Well," she said quietly, "maybe it's not falling apart. Maybe it's just getting a little messy." Sebastian looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time all morning, his panic subsided. "You're either an optimist or delusional. Both. It's a family trait." That's when she noticed them. Two men in black suits standing across the street, watching Sebastian like hawks eyeing a particularly expensive mouse. Sebastian? Are those your people?" He followed her gaze and paled even more, which was impressive given his current flower coating. Shit. Shit. Let me guess. Not the good guys? They work for the board members trying to force me out. If they see me like this, it's game over. The men started crossing the street. How fast can you move? Hazel asked. What? Can you run in those fancy shoes? Or are you going to fall over like a newborn giraffe? I probably fall over. Perfect. She grabbed his flour-covered hand. Welcome to your first lesson in being a regular person, Mr. Billionaire. When life gets messy, you improvise. She yanked him toward the bakery, just as the men reached the sidewalk. Excuse me, the taller one called out. We're looking for someone who might have been in a car accident here. Hazel turned, keeping Sebastian hidden behind her. Oh, you mean the guy who crashed into the flour truck? Yes, exactly. He took off running that way about 5 minutes ago, she said, pointing down the street. Looked pretty banged up, kept screaming something about being late for a meeting. The men exchanged glances. Which direction exactly? Toward the subway station, moving fast for someone covered in flour. After they left, Hazel turned to find Sebastian staring at her with an expression of pure amazement. You just lied for me. To strangers. Why? Because, she said, suddenly feeling shy, you looked like you needed help, and I've never been able to resist helping strays. Did you just call me a stray? A very expensive, very lost stray. Sebastian laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. I can't decide if that's insulting or endearing. Both. I'm gifted that way. So what now? I can't exactly show up to save my company looking like I've been dusted for fingerprints. Hazel looked him up and down, her mind already working. Well, Mr. Kane, it's your lucky day. You've stumbled into the one place in Brooklyn where miracles happen daily. Your bakery performs miracles? Among other things. She grinned. Ever heard of a makeover montage? A what? Oh, sweet summer child. You're about to get an education in the fine art of emergency transformation. But first, she handed him a broom. You're going to help me clean up this flour disaster you created. Sebastian looked at the broom like it was a foreign object. I've never used one of these before. Today's full of firsts, isn't it? As they worked side by side, Sebastian stealing glances at this incredible woman who'd saved him without asking for anything in return, and Hazel trying not to notice how the flour made his eyes look impossibly green. Neither of them realized they were about to embark on the most delicious adventure of their lives. So, Hazel said as they swept, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you need to not lose your company? 11, maybe 12. Good. I work better under pressure. Sebastian paused mid-sweep. Why are you helping me? Hazel stopped too, looking at him with those warm brown eyes that seemed to see straight through his defenses. Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because... She smiled. I have a feeling you're going to be worth the trouble. For the first time in months, Sebastian Kane felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Okay, flower boy, Hazel announced, clapping her hands together like a drill sergeant about to transform a recruit. Welcome to Hazel's Emergency Makeover Boot Camp. First rule, everything you think you know about looking presentable is wrong. Sebastian stood in the middle of her bakery, still dusted head to toe in flour, holding a broom like it might bite him. I'm starting to think this is a terrible idea. Oh, it's definitely terrible, but it's also brilliant. Sometimes the best ideas live in that sweet spot between genius and insanity. She circled him like a shark evaluating prey. Question. How attached are you to that suit? It's Armani. That's not what I asked. It cost $8,000. Still not what I asked. Sebastian sighed. I'm moderately attached. Wrong answer. You're about to become completely unattached. She grabbed a pair of scissors from behind the counter. Strip. I'm sorry, what? Not all the way, Romeo. Just the jacket. We're performing surgery, not hosting a peep show. As Sebastian reluctantly shrugged off his flour-caked jacket, Hazel started cutting away the worst parts with the precision of a surgeon and the enthusiasm of a kid with Christmas wrapping paper. "You know," she said, snipping away, "most people would be freaking out about destroying an $8,000 suit. Most people haven't had the kind of morning I've had. At this point, I'm just impressed you haven't suggested setting me on fire. The day's young." She grinned, then paused her cutting. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "What's it like? Being that rich, I mean." Sebastian was quiet for a moment, watching her work. "Honestly, lonely. Really, really lonely. You spend so much time wondering if people like you for you or for your bank account that you stop letting people close enough to find out." Hazel's hands stilled. "That sounds awful." "It is. But it's also safe. Can't get hurt if you don't let anyone in, right?" "Can't live either." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them charged with something electric. Then Hazel cleared her throat and went back to cutting. "Well, lucky for you, I'm too poor to be interested in your money and too stubborn to be scared off by your emotional walls." "Is that so?" "Absolutely. I once spent 3 hours convincing a stray cat to trust me. You're basically the same thing, except with better hair and more complicated trust issues." Sebastian laughed, really laughed. "Did you just compare me to a stray cat again?" "If the whiskers fit." She stepped back to examine her handiwork. "Okay, jacket surgery complete. Now for the real magic." She disappeared into the back room and returned with an armload of clothes. "My brother Danny left these here after his last breakup. He's about your size, and unlike you, he shops at normal human stores." Sebastian held up a simple blue button-down and dark jeans. "This is normal. Revolutionary concept, right? Now go change. Bathroom's in the back." While Sebastian changed, Hazel set up what she called her miracle station, a combination of wet towels, hair products she'd borrowed from her upstairs neighbor, and determination that could move mountains. "Okay," she called out. "How are we doing in there?" "I feel like a completely different person," came Sebastian's muffled voice. "Good different or identity crisis different? I'm not sure yet." When he emerged, Hazel's breath caught. Gone was the intimidating billionaire in his armor of expensive fabric. In his place stood a man who looked approachable, real, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt accessible rather than untouchable. "Holy shit," she whispered. "That good or that bad? That dangerous?" She shook her head. "Okay, sit. Hair time." Sebastian sat in the chair she'd positioned in front of her bathroom mirror, and Hazel moved behind him, her fingers working through his flour-dusted hair. The intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. Her hands gentle but confident, his eyes closing despite himself. "You know," she said softly, "you have really great hair. Like, annoyingly great. It's probably not fair to the rest of humanity." "I pay someone $300 to cut it." $300 for a haircut. She paused her ministrations. "Please tell me that includes like a massage and a small pony." "Just the haircut." "Oh my God, you're like an alien from Planet Rich People. Next, you'll tell me you've never eaten gas station nachos or worn socks with holes in them." "I haven't?" "We're going to need to work on your life experience education. This makeover is just the beginning." As she worked, Sebastian found himself relaxing for the first time in months. There was something about Hazel's presence that felt like safety. Not the cold, calculated safety of his usual world, but something warm and real. "Can I ask you something now?" he said. "Sure." "Why a bakery? What made you want to do this?" Hazel's hands stilled for a moment. "My grandmother. She taught me that feeding people is the most intimate thing you can do. You're literally giving them the fuel to live another day. She said baking was love made edible." "That's beautiful." "She was beautiful. Died when I was 22. Left me this place and a recipe book filled with more love than I knew what to do with." Her voice grew soft. "Some days I still feel like I'm just playing dress-up in her apron, you know?" Sebastian turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in her eyes made his chest tight. "I don't think you're playing dress-up." I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." "How can you be sure?" "Because," he said quietly, "I've been in a lot of places where people were just going through the motions. This isn't that. What you do here, it's real. It matters." Hazel stared at him, and for a moment, the bakery fell completely silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator and the sound of two hearts beating a little too fast. "Okay," she said finally, her voice slightly breathless. "Let's see the final result." She spun his chair around to face the mirror, and Sebastian's jaw dropped. The man looking back at him was familiar, but transformed. The same face, but somehow softer, more human. The expensive polish was gone, replaced by something that felt authentic. "I look," he started. "Like yourself," Hazel finished. "The real you, not the corporate version. I don't remember the last time I looked in a mirror and recognized the person staring back." "Well, now you do." She smiled. "So, Mr. Kane, ready to go save your company?" Sebastian stood and turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Hazel's knees weak. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me something. Anything. Don't let them change you back. The real you, he's worth fighting for." Sebastian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of flour still clinging to his skin. "What if I told you I'm starting to think the real me is someone who wants to spend more time in bakeries? I'd say that's a pretty smart guy. And what if I told you I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up? This, us, whatever this is becoming." Hazel reached up and straightened his collar, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. "Then I'd say welcome to being human, Sebastian Kane. Population, everyone who's ever felt something real." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility, until Sebastian's phone, miraculously unbroken despite the crash, buzzed with an incoming call. "Shit," he muttered, looking at the screen. "It's my assistant. The meeting's in an hour." "Then you better get going, superhero." "Hazel, go save your company. We'll figure out the rest later." Sebastian headed for the door, then turned back. "Will you be here when I get back?" "Where else would I be?" "Promise?" "I promise." As he left, Hazel watched through the window as Sebastian Kane, the real Sebastian Kane, walked down the street with a confidence that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with finally knowing who he was. She was still smiling when she realized she'd never asked him what time he'd be back. "Smooth, Hazel," she muttered to herself. "Real smooth." But she was already planning what she'd bake for when he returned. Sebastian walked into the Kane Industries boardroom looking like a completely different man, which, as it turned out, was exactly the problem. "What the hell happened to you?" Richard Blackwood, the lead board member, stared at Sebastian like he'd grown a second head. "You look like a normal person?" Sebastian suggested, sliding into his chair with a confidence that surprised even him. "Like someone who shops at Target," finished Margaret Chen, another board member, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Actually, I think these are from Old Navy," Sebastian replied cheerfully, examining his sleeves. "Surprisingly comfortable. Who knew?" The room fell silent. In the 15 years Sebastian had been CEO, he'd never once made a joke during a board meeting. He'd certainly never shown up in jeans and a button-down that cost less than their lunch appetizers. "Sebastian," Richard said carefully, "are you having some sort of breakdown?" "On the contrary, I'm having a breakthrough. But let's focus on why we're really here, shall we?" Sebastian leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his casual appearance. "Someone in this room is trying to destroy me." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "That's a serious accusation," Margaret said. "It's a serious situation. Someone leaked information about the Morrison deal to the press, specifically claiming I was drunk at Club Velvet last Tuesday night, spilling company secrets. Weren't you?" This from James Morrison himself, who joined via video call, his face stern on the wall-mounted screen. No, I was somewhere else entirely. Sebastian pulled out his phone, and I can prove it. What happened next was the kind of boardroom theater that would have made Shakespeare weep with joy. Sebastian had called Hazel during his walkover, explaining his plan. Now, as he dialed her number on speaker, every person in the room leaned forward like they were watching a tennis match. Murphy's Miracle Bakery, Hazel speaking. How can I make your day sweeter? Several board members exchanged glances. This was not what they'd expected. Hi, Hazel. It's Sebastian. I'm in my meeting now, with my business partners on speaker. Could you tell them where I was last Tuesday night around 10 p.m.? Oh, absolutely! Hazel's voice was bright and confident. You were in my bakery crying into a chocolate croissant. The room erupted. Crying? Richard sputtered. Into a what? Margaret gasped. Hold on, Sebastian said quickly. Hazel, maybe you could explain with a little more context? Right, sorry. So, Sebastian came in around 9:30 p.m. last Tuesday. He looked absolutely miserable, like someone had told him that puppies weren't real or something. He ordered our Heartbreak Special. That's a chocolate croissant with extra chocolate chips and a side of our Life is Pain hot chocolate. James Morrison's face on the screen was priceless. Your bakery has a heartbreak menu? Oh yeah, we specialize in emotional crisis carbs. Anyway, Sebastian sat in the corner booth for about 2 hours, mostly staring at his phone and occasionally making these little wounded sounds, like a sad seal. A seal? Richard looked like he might have an aneurysm. Sebastian buried his face in his hands. Hazel, what? You did sound like a seal. It was actually kind of adorable, very vulnerable. I kept wanting to bring you a blanket and maybe some tissues. Margaret turned to Sebastian. You have emotional breakdowns in public bakeries? Apparently I do now, Sebastian muttered. Oh, and he tipped me $300, Hazel continued cheerfully. For a $12 order. I thought he was having some kind of rich person emergency, but he said he was just grateful for the safe space to process his feelings. His exact words. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the next building. Finally, James Morrison cleared his throat. Well, that's certainly not Club Velvet. No kidding, Richard said weakly. So, Sebastian said, straightening up, now that we've established that I was having an emotional crisis in a bakery rather than selling company secrets in a nightclub, perhaps we can focus on finding the actual leak. That's when Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went white. What is it? Richard demanded. I just got a text from an unknown number. She held up her phone with shaking hands. Stop digging or everyone finds out about the offshore accounts. The room exploded into chaos. Offshore accounts? James Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers. What offshore accounts? Sebastian demanded. I don't know, Margaret protested. I don't have any offshore accounts. Richard's phone buzzed, then James's, then Sebastian's. The messages were all the same. The bakery girl dies if Kane doesn't resign by midnight. Sebastian's blood turned to ice. No. No, no, no. Who would threaten some random baker? Richard asked. Someone who's been watching me, Sebastian said, already standing. Someone who knows I care about her. You care about the baker? Margaret squeaked. I'm in love with the baker, Sebastian snapped, then stopped, realizing what he'd just said. Out loud, to his entire board. The silence was deafening. You're in love, James Morrison said slowly, with a baker, who you met when you were crying into pastry. Apparently, yes. This is the weirdest board meeting of my entire career, Richard muttered. Sebastian's phone rang. Unknown number. Answer it, Margaret whispered. Put it on speaker, Sebastian answered. Hello? Mr. Kane. The voice was electronically distorted, like something from a bad thriller movie. I see you got my message. Who is this? Someone who's been very disappointed in your recent choices, slumming with the working class. Very unlike you. What do you want? I want you to resign. Effective immediately. Sign over your shares to the Morrison Group and disappear. You have until midnight, or your little baker friend has an unfortunate accident. Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. If you touch her, you'll what? Call the police? Good luck proving anything. I've been very careful. The line went dead. Sebastian was already moving toward the door when Richard called out, "Where are you going?" "To get Hazel somewhere safe." "And then what?" Sebastian paused at the door, his jaw set with determination. "Then I'm going to find out which one of you is trying to destroy my life. And when I do, I'm going to make them regret ever thinking they could threaten someone I love." As he left, Margaret turned to Richard. "Did our CEO just declare war on one of us?" "I think he did. While wearing Old Navy." "Apparently so." On the screen, James Morrison was laughing. "This is either the best or worst business meeting I've ever been part of." Meanwhile, Sebastian was running through the streets of Brooklyn, his heart pounding with fear and fury. He'd just realized two things. First, someone close to him was willing to kill to get what they wanted. And second, he was absolutely, completely, terrifyingly in love with Hazel Murphy. Now, he just had to keep her alive long enough to tell her. Sebastian burst through the bakery door like a man possessed, his hair wild and his eyes scanning the room frantically. "Hazel! Hazel!" "Whoa there, Superman," Hazel called from behind the counter, where she was peacefully decorating cupcakes with tiny sugar flowers. "What's with the dramatic entrance? Did you forget how doors work, or—" Her joke died when she saw his face. Pure, undiluted terror. "We need to leave, right now." He was already moving toward her, his hands shaking. "Someone's threatened to hurt you because of me." "Someone's what now?" Hazel set down her piping bag, her brain struggling to process this sudden shift from romantic comedy to action thriller. "Long story. Very long, very complicated story involving corporate espionage and death threats. The important part is that you're in danger because I'm an idiot who fell in love with you and announced it to half of Manhattan's business district." Hazel blinked. "I'm sorry. You did what now?" "Focus, Hazel. Danger first, feelings later." "No, hold up." She stepped back, flour-covered hands on her hips. "You announced to people that you're in love with me? Without, I don't know, mentioning it to me first?" Sebastian stopped his frantic pacing. That's what you're focusing on right now?" "Hell yes, that's what I'm focusing on. You can't just go around declaring love to boardrooms full of strangers like you're ordering coffee. I'll have a grande latte and, by the way, I'm in love with the baker." "It wasn't exactly planned. Nothing about this is planned." Hazel exploded, her voice rising. "Yesterday I was living my quiet little life, making muffins and minding my own business. Today I'm apparently starring in some billionaire soap opera where people make death threats over croissants." "Hazel, please. No, you don't get to please me right now." She was pacing now, her movements sharp and agitated. "Do you have any idea what this is like for me? You swan in here with your fancy car and your $8,000 suits and your corporate conspiracies, and suddenly I'm supposed to just— what? Drop everything and run away with you?" Sebastian's face softened. "I'm not asking you to run away with me. I'm asking you to let me keep you safe." "Safe from what? From who? You still haven't actually explained what's happening. Someone on my board is trying to force me out of my own company. They're using you to get to me." "Using me how?" "They threaten to kill you if I don't resign by midnight." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't quite exploded yet. Hazel sat down heavily on a flour sack. "Kill me. Someone wants to kill me. Because you like me. Because I love you." "Stop saying that!" She shot up again, her eyes blazing. "You don't get to love me. We've known each other for exactly 1 day. 1 day, Sebastian. You can't build love in a day like it's some kind of emotional IKEA furniture." "But I do." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love the fantasy of the simple baker girl who saved you from your complicated life. But that's not love, that's projection. Sebastian stared at her, and she could see the exact moment her words hit their target. You think I'm projecting? I think you're a man who's been lonely for so long that the first person to show you genuine kindness looks like a soulmate. Her voice was gentler now, but still firm. I think you're confusing gratitude with love. And I think, Sebastian said quietly, that you're scared. Of course I'm scared. There are death threats. Not of the threats, of this, of us. Of the possibility that maybe, just maybe, sometimes love doesn't follow a reasonable timeline. Hazel felt like she'd been slapped. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. Then don't you dare dismiss what I'm feeling because it doesn't fit your comfort zone. They stared at each other across the bakery, the air crackling with tension that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with two people who were terrified of wanting the same thing. That's when the black SUV pulled up outside. Shit, Sebastian muttered, moving to the window. We're out of time. 3 men in expensive suits got out of the vehicle, and they definitely weren't there for the blueberry scones. Back door, Sebastian said urgently. Now. This is my bakery, Hazel said stubbornly. I'm not running from my own business. Hazel, this isn't the time for what? For me to have an opinion about my own life. She grabbed a rolling pin from the counter. You know what your problem is, Sebastian. You're so used to everyone doing what you say that you can't handle someone who pushes back. I can handle... No, you can't. You waltz in here, turn my world upside down, and then expect me to just follow your lead like some grateful peasant who should be honored by your attention. That's not, isn't it? Her voice cracked slightly. Look at yourself. Even dressed down, even trying to be normal, you still think you know what's best for everyone. You still think your money and your power mean you get to make the decisions. Sebastian's face went pale. Is that really what you think of me? The front door chimed as the men entered. Ms. Murphy? The lead man's voice was smooth, professional, and absolutely terrifying. We'd like to have a word. Hazel gripped the rolling pin tighter. Bakery's closed. We're not here for pastry. His eyes found Sebastian. Mr. Kane, you look different. Frank, Sebastian said, recognition dawning. I should have known. Richard's head of security. Former head of security. I've recently found more lucrative employment. Frank smiled, and it was the kind of smile that belonged in horror movies. Mr. Blackwood sends his regards. Richard's behind this? Sebastian stepped forward, putting himself between Frank and Hazel. I trusted him for 15 years. Trust is expensive, Mr. Kane, and you've recently become too expensive to trust. What does that mean? It means your little transformation has made you unpredictable, unreliable, bad for business. Frank's eyes flicked to Hazel. Emotional. If you think loving someone makes me weak, you're about to find out how wrong you are. Frank laughed. Loving someone? Mr. Kane, you met this woman yesterday. What you're experiencing isn't love. It's a psychological phenomenon called rescue romance. You saved her. She saved you. And now your brain is confused about the difference between gratitude and affection. Hazel's grip on the rolling pin loosened slightly. Rescue romance. Projection. Everything she'd just accused Sebastian of. That's not... Sebastian started. Isn't it? Frank's smile widened. Ms. Murphy, surely you can see that a man like Sebastian Kane doesn't fall in love with women like you. Not really. Not permanently. Once the novelty wears off, once he remembers where he belongs, he'll go back to his penthouse and his charity galas and his appropriate social circle. Shut up, Sebastian said dangerously. And you, Ms. Murphy, will go back to your little bakery and your simple life, with a story to tell your friends about the time you almost believed in fairy tales. Hazel looked at Sebastian, then at Frank, then back at Sebastian. Everything Frank was saying echoed her own fears, her own insecurities, magnified and weaponized. Get out, she said quietly. Ms. Murphy, Frank began, not you. Her eyes were on Sebastian. You. Get out of my bakery. Sebastian's face crumpled. Hazel, don't listen to him, please. Just go, Sebastian. Go back to your world and let me deal with mine. I'm not leaving you with them. You're not leaving me with them because they're leaving too. She turned to Frank, raising the rolling pin. All of you, out, now. Frank chuckled. Ms. Murphy, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. You want Sebastian to resign. Fine. Here's a better idea. Take your corporate conspiracy and shove it where the sun don't shine. Sebastian doesn't need his company. He doesn't need his money. And he sure as hell doesn't need threats from wannabe movie villains with bad suits and worse dialogue. She turned back to Sebastian. But apparently he doesn't need me either. So everyone out. I have cupcakes to finish. Sebastian stared at her, his heart breaking in real time. Hazel! Out! As Frank and his men left, chuckling among themselves, Sebastian lingered at the door. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Hazel replied, not looking at him. It is. After he left, Hazel stood alone in her bakery, surrounded by the scent of sugar and vanilla and the echoes of everything that might have been. She was still holding the rolling pin when she started to cry. Sebastian sat on the curb outside Hazel's bakery at 11:47 p.m., wearing his old navy clothes and his broken heart like matching accessories. His phone had been buzzing non-stop with calls from Richard, but he'd stopped caring about corporate conspiracies the moment Hazel told him to leave. You look like a very expensive homeless person. He looked up to find Danny Murphy, unmistakably Hazel's brother, with the same stubborn chin and defiant brown eyes, standing over him with 2 cups of coffee. You must be Danny, Sebastian said, accepting the cup gratefully. And you must be the billionaire who made my sister cry for 3 hours straight. Danny sat beside him. Nice jeans, by the way. I have excellent taste. She told you about me? She told me about some rich asshole who crashed into her life, turned everything upside down, then accused her of being scared when she had a perfectly reasonable emotional breakdown about it. Sebastian winced. That's actually pretty accurate. Yeah, she's good at reading people. It's what makes her such a good baker. She can tell what someone needs just by looking at them. What do you think I need? Danny studied him for a moment. Honestly, a reality check and maybe a spine transplant. Excuse me. Dude, you're sitting on a curb feeling sorry for yourself while some psycho is threatening my sister. Meanwhile, she's in there stress-baking enough cookies to feed a small army because she's terrified and heartbroken and too proud to admit either. Sebastian stood up. She's scared? Of course she's scared, but not of death threats. Hazel once chased off 3 muggers with a baguette. She's scared that you're right. Right about what? That she's falling in love with you too. Sebastian's heart stopped. She said that? She didn't have to. I've never seen her clean the same counter 17 times while muttering about stupid, gorgeous billionaires with stupid, perfect hair. That's when Sebastian's phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer, Danny warned. Sebastian answered anyway. What? Time's up, Kane. It was Frank's voice, but this time without the electronic distortion. I hope you enjoyed your little romance because... Frank, wait. I need to ask you something. You're not exactly in a position to make demands. Just one question. How long have you been planning this? Frank chuckled. Months. Ever since Richard realized you were becoming unstable. Unstable how? You started asking questions about company culture, wanting to know why we didn't offer better benefits to lower-level employees, talking about corporate responsibility like it was a real thing instead of a PR buzzword. Sebastian's blood ran cold. You're saying I became a threat because I started caring about people? I'm saying you became a liability because you forgot where your loyalties should lie. And where should they lie? With profit, with power, with people who matter. People like you and Richard? People like us, not like your little baker. Sebastian looked at Danny, who was listening with growing anger. What if I told you that my little baker matters more to me than all of it? The company, the money, everything? Then I'd say you're even more pathetic than we thought. Good. Sebastian smiled grimly. Because I'm about to prove just how pathetic I can be. He hung up and immediately dialed 911. What are you doing? Danny asked. Something I should have done hours ago. Sebastian put the phone on speaker as it connected. 911, what's your emergency? This is Sebastian Kane, CEO of Kane Industries. I'm calling to report corporate conspiracy, extortion, and death threats. While Sebastian gave his statement to the police, Danny slipped inside the bakery. Hazel, he called softly. You need to come outside. I'm busy, came her muffled voice from behind a mountain of chocolate chip cookies. He's calling the police. He's turning in his own board members. Hazel's head popped up. He's what? He's giving up everything. His company, his position, probably his freedom if this goes sideways, to keep you safe. That's stupid. Yeah, it is. It's also romantic as hell. Through the window, they could see Sebastian still on the phone with the dispatcher, his voice clear and determined as he detailed Richard's conspiracy. He's really doing it, Hazel whispered. He's really doing it. And Hazel? I don't think this is rescue romance or projection or whatever that psycho said. I think this is a guy who realized that love isn't about timelines or logic, it's about choice. What choice? The choice to put someone else's happiness before your own survival instincts. Hazel watched Sebastian through the window. This man who'd walked into her life like a hurricane and was now willing to sacrifice everything he'd built to keep her safe. I've been an idiot, she said quietly. Yeah, you have, but the fixable kind of idiot. That's when the police cars arrived, 3 of them, lights flashing, followed by an unmarked sedan that Sebastian seemed to recognize. Detective Morrison, Sebastian called out as a woman in her 50s stepped out of the sedan. Mr. Kane, we got your call. She looked him up and down. You look different than your photos. I feel different than my photos. Good different or identity crisis different? Sebastian glanced at the bakery where he could see Hazel's silhouette in the window. Definitely good different. All right, let's get this sorted. We've had Mr. Blackwood and his associates under surveillance for the past 6 months. Your call tonight just gave us the probable cause we needed. Surveillance for what? Securities fraud, money laundering, and about 12 other white-collar crimes that'll put them away for a very long time. Sebastian stared at her. You mean this was never really about me? Oh, it was about you, but not the way you think. You weren't the target, Mr. Kane. You were the threat. The moment you started asking questions about where certain funds were going, you became a problem they needed to eliminate. So when I started caring about employees and corporate responsibility, you started getting close to finding out about their illegal activities. The whole corporate spy thing was misdirection. They were the spies, selling company information to competitors and using your name as cover. Sebastian felt like he'd been hit by a truck. Everything I thought was happening was exactly backwards. You weren't becoming a worse CEO, Mr. Kane. You were becoming a better person, and that terrified them. As if summoned by the conversation, Richard Blackwood's car pulled up at the end of the street. He took one look at the police cars and tried to reverse, but found his exit blocked by another patrol car. Showtime, Detective Morrison muttered. The next 20 minutes were a blur of arrests, Miranda rights, and Richard Blackwood screaming about lawyers and constitutional violations. Through it all, Sebastian stood on the sidewalk, watching his former life get dismantled piece by piece. You okay? Danny asked, appearing beside him. I think so, it's just 15 years of thinking I knew who I could trust. Trust is earned, not inherited. Just because someone's been around doesn't mean they deserve your loyalty. When did you become so wise? When I watched my sister fall in love with someone worth the risk. Sebastian turned to look at the bakery, where Hazel stood in the doorway, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Think she'll forgive me for being an arrogant ass? Depends. Are you done being an arrogant ass? I'm going to try very hard to be. Then yeah, she'll probably forgive you. She's got a thing for reformation projects. Sebastian walked toward the bakery, his heart pounding harder than it had during any board meeting or business deal. Hazel met him halfway, stopping just close enough that he could smell flour and vanilla in her hair. So, she said quietly, you chose me over your empire. I chose us over my ego. There might not be an us to choose. I know, but I had to try. She studied his face in the flashing lights of the police cars. Why? Because, Sebastian said, reaching for her hands. You were right about everything. I was projecting. I was scared. I was treating you like a fantasy instead of a person. And now? Now I know that love isn't about timelines or logic or whether it makes sense on paper. It's about choice. Every day, choosing to see someone for who they really are and deciding that's exactly who you want to choose. Hazel felt tears prick her eyes. And who am I really? You're brave and stubborn and you make the world sweeter just by existing in it. You're too proud for your own good, and you wield kitchen utensils like weapons, and you saved me in ways I didn't even know I needed saving. That's a very pretty speech. It's a very true speech. She looked into his eyes, searching for something. What happens now? You've got no company, no job, probably no money once the lawyers get through with this mess. Now I figure out who Sebastian Kane is when he's not hiding behind a corporate title. And if that person is someone I don't like, then I'll work very hard to become someone you do like. Hazel smiled through her tears. That's either very romantic or very unhealthy. Probably both. I can live with both. And then, she kissed him. Right there on the sidewalk, with police cars flashing around them, and her brother cheering from the bakery doorway, and Detective Morrison trying to hide a smile behind her clipboard. It was the kind of kiss that tasted like forgiveness and second chances and the promise of something real. When they broke apart, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. So what now? Now, Hazel said, grinning, you help me finish stress baking these cookies. Fair warning, I made enough to feed half of Brooklyn. Sounds perfect. I've got nowhere else to be. Good, she said, pulling him toward the bakery. Because we've got a lot to figure out, and I do my best thinking with my hands in dough. As they walked inside together, Sebastian realized that for the first time in his adult life, he had absolutely no idea what the future held, and he'd never been happier. 6 months later. Sebastian Kane, if you don't stop reorganizing my spice rack, I'm going to murder you with a whisk. Sebastian looked up from where he was alphabetizing cardamom and cinnamon, his hair dusted with flour and a guilty expression on his face. But it's so much more efficient this way. Do you know how much time you'll save when I what? When I forget where everything is because my boyfriend turned my kitchen into a corporate filing system. Hazel appeared from behind the industrial mixer, wielding said whisk like a tiny sword. Some of us don't organize our lives like spreadsheets, Mr. Former CEO. Former failed CEO, Sebastian corrected cheerfully. And technically, I prefer aspiring baker with control issues. Aspiring is generous. Yesterday, you tried to create a project timeline for sourdough starter. It worked, didn't it? Hazel couldn't argue with that. Sebastian's anal retentive approach to baking had actually improved their efficiency by 30%. Not that she'd ever admit it out loud. Whatever, just try to remember that some things in life can't be optimized. Like what? She walked over and kissed him, slow and sweet, tasting like vanilla extract and possibility. Like that. I don't know, Sebastian murmured against her lips. I think with enough practice, we could definitely optimize that. You're impossible. I'm ambitious. There's a difference. The bakery had undergone quite a transformation since Sebastian's former life imploded spectacularly. Kane Industries had been dissolved, its assets distributed among various parties after the dust settled from Richard's arrest. Sebastian himself had walked away with enough money to live comfortably. Not billionaire comfortable, but never worry about rent again. Comfortable. Which was good, because he'd used most of it to expand Murphy's Miracle Bakery. "Morning, lovebirds!" Danny burst through the back door carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing a grin that suggested he'd witnessed something embarrassing. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Just Sebastian trying to turn baking into rocket science again," Hazel said, accepting her coffee gratefully. "Hey, my systematic approach to croissant lamination increased our success rate by 47%, yes, we know," Danny and Hazel said in unison. Sebastian looked offended. "You two are ganging up on me." "It's called family, genius," Danny said, ruffling Sebastian's hair. "Get used to it." The word family still made Sebastian's chest do weird things. After 34 years of thinking family meant board meetings and obligation, discovering it could mean teasing and unconditional acceptance was like finding out gravity worked backwards. "Speaking of family," Hazel said, trying and failing to look casual. "My mom called yesterday." Sebastian froze. And she wants to meet you. She wants to meet me. That's what I said. Your mother wants to meet me. Sebastian, you've negotiated billion-dollar deals. You can handle one Irish Catholic mother from Queens. Those billion-dollar deals didn't involve someone who could potentially hate me forever. Danny snorted. Dude, you're dating her daughter and you've tripled the bakery's profits. Mom's going to love you. What if she doesn't? Then, Hazel said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss his worried forehead, you'll win her over the same way you won me over. By crashing into your life and creating chaos? By being yourself. The real you. Not the corporate version or the trying too hard version. Just Sebastian. Before Sebastian could respond, the front door chimed, and a familiar voice called out, "Is this where I can find the infamous Sebastian Kane?" They all turned to see Detective Morrison standing in the doorway, looking amused. "Detective," Sebastian said, wiping his floury hands on his apron. "Please tell me you're here for pastry and not to arrest me for something." "Definitely pastry." "I've been dreaming about those chocolate croissants since the trial ended." She approached the counter, her eyes taking in the renovated space. "This place looks amazing." "Sebastian's been optimizing us," Hazel said with air quotes. "I prefer enhancing," Sebastian corrected. "He color-coded our inventory system," Danny added helpfully, "and created a customer feedback database," Hazel continued, "and implemented a new scheduling algorithm that maximized our—" Okay, Detective Morrison laughed, holding up her hands. "I get it. You've gone full domestic." "Is that bad?" Sebastian asked, suddenly looking uncertain. "Are you kidding? It's perfect. Richard Blackwood is serving 15 to 20 for securities fraud, and you're here arguing about spice rack organization with people who love you. I'd say you won." "We all won," Hazel corrected, sliding her hand into Sebastian's. "Speaking of winning," Detective Morrison said, pulling an envelope from her jacket. "This came for you through official channels, from the Morrison Group." Sebastian's face went pale. "James Morrison? But we... Just open it," the detective said gently. With shaking hands, Sebastian opened the envelope and read the letter inside. His expression went from confusion to shock to something that might have been joy. "What does it say?" Hazel asked. He's offering me a consulting position. He says that anyone who can walk away from billions of dollars for love probably has something valuable to teach about priorities and leadership." "That's amazing!" Hazel threw her arms around him. "There's more," Sebastian continued, his voice slightly strangled. "He wants to invest in the bakery. He thinks we could franchise the concept. Small, community-focused bakeries with the efficiency systems I've been developing." "Franchise?" Danny's eyes lit up. "Like multiple Murphy's Miracle Bakeries?" "Murphy Kane Miracle Bakeries," Sebastian corrected softly, looking at Hazel. If that's okay with you." Hazel stared at him, then at the letter, then back at him. "You want to put your name on my bakery?" "I want to put our names on our future." The silence stretched for what felt like forever. "Well," Detective Morrison said finally. "This is either going to be very romantic or very awkward, and either way, I should probably leave." "Wait," Hazel said, not taking her eyes off Sebastian. "There's something I need to say first." Sebastian's heart stopped. "Okay. Sebastian Kane, you are the most ridiculous, complicated, wonderful man I've ever met. You reorganize my spices, you've memorized the optimal temperature for proving dough, and you once spent 3 hours researching the historical significance of croissants just to better understand my creative process. Is this going somewhere good?" Sebastian asked nervously. "You're also brave and kind, and you make me laugh every single day. And yes, I would be honored to share my name and my bakery and my completely chaotic life with you. Really. But I have conditions. Anything. First, you have to stop trying to create efficiency metrics for kissing. That was one time, and it was for science. Second, you have to meet my mother without having a panic attack. I make no promises about the panic attack. And third," Hazel stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, "you have to promise that no matter how big this gets, how many bakeries we open, how successful we become, you'll never forget that the best things in life can't be measured or optimized or put in a spreadsheet." "Like what?" "Like the way flour looks in your hair. Like Danny's terrible jokes that make us laugh anyway. Like the sound you make when you're concentrating on decorating cupcakes." "I don't make a sound when I decorate cupcakes." "You hum," Hazel said, grinning. "You hum this little tune under your breath, and it's the most adorable thing I've ever heard." Sebastian's face went red. "I do not hum." "You absolutely hum," Danny confirmed. "It's like a little Sebastian soundtrack." "This is harassment." "This is love," Hazel corrected, reaching up to cup his face. "Messy, ridiculous, impossible to quantify love." "I love you too," Sebastian said, leaning into her touch. "Even if you refuse to let me optimize our kissing schedule. Especially because I refuse to let you optimize our kissing schedule." Detective Morrison cleared her throat. "So, is this the part where I order a dozen chocolate croissants and pretend I didn't witness the most adorable business proposal in NYPD history?" "Make it 2 dozen, Hazel said, not looking away from Sebastian. "We're celebrating." 1 year later, the grand opening of the third Murphy Kane Miracle Bakery was everything Sebastian had never known he wanted. Instead of press conferences and corporate presentations, there were balloons and face painting and a crowd of neighbors who'd become friends. Hazel stood behind the counter of their flagship Brooklyn location, watching Sebastian attempt to teach a group of 8-year-olds the proper technique for kneading dough. He was covered in flour, completely out of his element, and absolutely glowing with happiness. "You know," Danny said, appearing beside her with a tray of their signature New Beginning cookies, "I never thought I'd see the day when my sister's boyfriend would voluntarily spend his Saturday morning covered in chocolate and small children." "He's not my boyfriend anymore," Hazel said casually. Danny nearly dropped the tray. "What? But you guys just opened a third location. You're wearing matching aprons. You have a joint checking account." "Danny," Hazel laughed, holding up her left hand where a simple, perfect ring caught the light. "He's my fiancé." "When did that happen?" "Last night. He proposed with a cupcake." "A cupcake?" "A red velvet cupcake with cream cheese frosting and a ring hidden in the center." He'd calculated the exact depth needed to keep the ring safe but accessible, and he'd even created a little presentation about why red velvet was the optimal choice for... Oh my God. He made a PowerPoint presentation for his proposal, didn't he? 17 slides, Hazel confirmed, grinning, including pie charts about our compatibility and a timeline for optimal wedding planning. "And you said yes to this maniac?" "I said yes to this maniac." Danny shook his head in amazement. "Well, I guess if you can love someone despite their proposal PowerPoints, you can love them through anything." Across the bakery, Sebastian looked up from his dough kneading lesson and caught Hazel's eye. He smiled that smile, the one that was just for her, the one that said, "Can you believe this is our life?" And she felt her heart do that little flip it had been doing since the day a flour-covered billionaire crashed into her world. Some recipes, Hazel had learned, couldn't be measured or timed or perfected through repetition. Some recipes required nothing more than the right ingredients, a little bit of faith, and the willingness to embrace the beautiful mess of it all. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found someone willing to help you bake that recipe for the rest of your life, even if they insisted on organizing your spice rack. The end.